Considered as read, and the gentleman is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is simple. It would exempt individuals fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes from Section 104. We should exempt people fleeing communist and totalitarian dictatorships from this legislation and allow them to apply for asylum as our laws were intended. The underlying bill would bar individuals who cross the border between ports of entry from seeking asylum. This means individuals would be forced to wait in Mexico to cross the border and be processed. That would make people fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes sitting ducks for the cartels for exploitation, abuse, kidnapping, or murder. We have seen what happens when people are forced to wait in Mexico for too long. Under the Remain in Mexico program, there were over 1,500 publicly reported cases of murder, rape, torture, kidnapping, and other violent assaults against migrants returned under the Remain in Mexico program. In fact, just last month, we saw what happens when vulnerable migrants are put at risk, when migrants in an immigration center in Ciudad Juarez were left to be burned alive.
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. If you love this country, believe in strong borders, and aren't afraid to call out hypocrisy in Washington, D.C., you're in the right place. Today, we're breaking down a fiery exchange from the House Judiciary Committee between Schiff, that Adam Schiff and Matt Gaetz. They're fighting over an amendment about asylum seekers and so-called totalitarian regimes. Let's get into it.
This is not the fate we want for anyone, and we don't want people fleeing totalitarian dictatorships like people fleeing Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua or Russia or China or Vietnam or elsewhere to have to face those kind of dangers. There was a time when my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claimed to oppose communism and totalitarian dictatorships and welcomed people fleeing those horrible regimes. The underlying bill suggests otherwise. I urge my colleagues to join in this amendment so that those fleeing asylum are not put at those fleeing persecution by these communist regimes are not put at additional risk by having to wait for long periods of time in dangerous places before they can lawfully apply for asylum.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Will you yield for the clarifying question?
You can seek your own recognition. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman seek recognition?
I guess so.
The point of order is withdrawn, and Mr. Gaetz is recognized.
Thank you. I yield to the sponsor. If the sponsor would be willing to engage in a colloquy with me, would you consider the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to be a totalitarian dictatorship?
Mr. Gaetz, I give the same answer that Representative Lofgren gave before. These are not new terms of art. These are the terms used in current law. And so we are merely applying current law to protect people, and in particular, in this case, those that are fleeing communist dictatorships. If the gentleman, his objection is that this definition is overbroad.
No. Mr. Schiff,
you yielded to me.
I'm asking you a clarifying question.
If you would yield, if you would respond to my question, which is, if this amendment is narrowed to communist dictatorships, will you support it?
Well, again, Mr. Schiff, I'm just trying to understand what
your amendment says. I guess your answer is no, then, Mr. Gaetz.
Well, that you perhaps assume too much, my friend.
Your answer
because
is yes.
I'm asking what you mean by totalitarian dictatorship and just whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would qualify. It's just a yes or no question.
Well, I certainly think.
Forgive me for not knowing the list that Ms.
Would you like an answer, Mr. Gaetz? I certainly consider Saudi Arabia to be a dictatorship. Yes, I do.
A totalitarian one?
Mr. Gaetz, my question is, if your problem with this amendment is you think it's
Mr.
overbroad...
Schiff, I'm not stating a problem with the amendment. I am merely asking you what it means.
My question then, Mr. Gaetz, is will you support it?
What is the difference between a dictatorship and a totalitarian dictatorship?
My question...
Since Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship...
There is a difference between totalitarianism and dictatorship.
Well, sure, I'm asking you to explain the differences of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
That's really the question, Mr. Gaetz.
Why can't you just answer whether or not your amendment would apply to them?
Mr. Gaetz, this is just a rhetorical exercise.
It's a serious effort to understand whether or not your amendment applies to the kingdom.
If your question is sincere, which I know assumes too much, but if it is, then will you support the amendment confined to communist dictatorships? Yes or no, Mr. Gaetz?
I'm probably not going to support the amendment either way. That doesn't
Well, there
mean
you go.
I don't
There you
want to know
go.
what
Well,
it means.
then what about all the rhetoric you constantly espouse about standing up to communism? Here you're saying someone fleeing communism, if they're interdicted between ports, then they will not qualify.
Right,
Doesn't
because
matter what kind of
there is
regime.
a mechanism by which one seeks asylum for those very reasons, and it's not showing up and creating an entire
So this
loophole in
whole
the
thing
asylum
about Saudi
system.
Arabia is just a red herring, right?
I'm
Mr. Gaetz?
just curious to know whether or not you
Well,
consider them
I
qualifying under the
appreciate
bill.
your
and I
curiosity, but
I would burned
appreciate
2.5 minutes. And it's just a simple question.
consistency.
You know, Mr.
I
Schiff,
would
people on the
appreciate
border
consistency
don't get to have a
more than
debate like this
curiosity.
like you and I do. It's
I would
not your time,
appreciate
Mr.
it
Schiff. I'm
if you
reclaiming
would
my
stand
time.
up to
Mr.
communism
Gaetz has the time. Mr.
the
Gaetz
way
has
you
the
say
time.
you do.
Mr. Gaetz has the time.
Look, on the border, someone doesn't get to have this joyful little colloquy with you. A Border Patrol agent has to look at someone and assess whether or not they're going to let them in or not. And I'm just, for clarity, even though I'm not going to support your amendment, I'm going to support the bill. In the unlikely event that your amendment were to be adopted, I simply want to know if someone encounters someone from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether or not the exception that your amendment affords would allow that or not.
As I said, I'm using the existing definition, Mr. Gaetz. My
So
question
does
to
that
you
definition
is,
include the
my
kingdom or
question
not?
to you is, will
This
you
is
will you
insane.
live
This
up
isn't-
to
you
your
just have to answer the
anti-communist rhetoric?
question,
Will
Mr.
you
Schiff.
live up to your anti-communist rhetoric, or is it just a lot of talk from you, Mr. Gaetz?
I don't think you have to blow a
I
hole
guess
through the
it's
asylum
just
system to
a lot
oppose
of talk.
communism.
I guess it's just a lot of talk with you. Nothing more than a lot of
It's all,
empty
I just want
talk.
to know if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is included or excluded. How is this so difficult for you?
Well,
Do you have
just-
any compassion for the people who would have to make this assessment on the border? I just want to know.
Would you care for me to read the code section to you?
Gladly.
The existence of a single political party organized on a dictatorial basis with so close an identity between such party and its policies and the government policies of the country in which it exists, and the party and the government constitute an indistinguishable unit, and the forcible suppression of opposition to such party. That is how the code currently defines
Would
a
you-
totalitarian
would you
party
define Saudi
and a
Arabia that way or not?
totalitarian dictatorship.
Would you define them
if
that way
you-
or not, Adam?
So if you wanted to know, read the code. But the
But would you
question
apply
is
to
not,
them or not?
the
It's your
question is
amendment.
not whether you can read the code. The question is
You wrote the
whether you
amendment, and you
stand for
can't say
anything,
whether it
Mr.
applies
Gaetz.
to a specific
the question
country.
is, do you
Why does this
stand?
pain you so
do you
much?
stand for anything? Does anything you say mean anything
I
to you?
merely am seeking
Well,
your own
are you
ability
really
to define
so
your own
soft?
amendment.
Are you really so soft on communism now, Mr. Gaetz? I am shocked.
Soft on communism.
So
You're soft on
And
definitions
you would
within
accept,
your own
you would,
bill.
You would
Soft on the
prosecute.
basics of
you
the
would
English
prosecute
language. Soft
and
on the
deny
interpretation
asylum
statute
to someone
mechanisms
fleeing
by which a Border
communism
Patrol agent would
merely
have to apply
because
this.
they won't.
You know what? A
wait
Border
in
Patrol
Mexico
agent
to
isn't going to
be
have this.
Mercifully, the
Nice.
gentleman is out of time. Mercifully, the gentleman is out of time. Okay. Woo.
Should we have unanimous consent to
No,
continue?
no, everybody's out of time. Everybody's out of time. Does anyone seek recognition?
First off, let me just say, it's about time we saw some real debate about our border and our asylum process. For too long, the left has tried to water down our laws, making us less secure and more vulnerable. This time, Adam Schiff, of all people, wants to carve out a special exception in an immigration bill. He says folks fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes should get a free pass to claim asylum, even if they cross the border illegally. He paints this picture of desperate migrants, all innocent, all just seeking freedom. He's got his talking points lined up: cartel violence, burned alive in Mexico, all the emotional manipulation you'd expect. But you know what's missing? Any real talk about the consequences of gutting our asylum rules and the chaos at our southern border. Then Matt Gaetz steps in, and love him or hate him, Gaetz asks the questions that actually matter. He presses Schiff. Okay, who qualifies as a totalitarian regime? Is Saudi Arabia on the list? What makes a dictatorship totalitarian? This is important, folks. If you're going to write laws that create exceptions, you better know exactly who those exceptions are for. Schiff, predictably, dodges, deflects, and basically tries to run out the clock. He keeps pivoting back to communist dictatorships, but the amendment says totalitarian, which is a much broader, vaguer term. That's dangerous. Do we really want to create loopholes that let anyone from any oppressive country claim asylum just because their government is mean? Where do you draw the line? That's what Gaetz is getting at, and Schiff won't answer. Schiff then tries to turn it into a gotcha moment. Will you live up to your anti-communist rhetoric, Matt? Classic. But here's the deal. Being against communism doesn't mean you throw open the borders to anyone who claims to be a victim. There's a process for a reason. You can oppose communism, you can support freedom, and you can still believe in law and order. Let's not forget, this is the same Adam Schiff who, for years, has twisted the law and abused his power for political gain. Now he wants to rewrite our asylum system in the name of compassion. But what he's really doing is undermining American sovereignty. Let's talk facts. The southern border is in crisis. We have record numbers of people coming across, drug trafficking, human smuggling, and yes, cartel violence. Do you think creating more exceptions and gray areas in our asylum laws is going to make things better? Or will it just encourage more chaos, more illegal crossings, and more exploitation? If someone is truly fleeing persecution, there are legal ways to apply for asylum, at ports of entry, through the embassies, or even refugee resettlement programs. But Schiff's amendment would reward those who break the law and cross wherever they want, whenever they want. That's not how a country works. Here's what this all comes down to. We need clear, strong borders. We need laws that protect American citizens first. We need to stop letting the left play word games and emotional politics with our national security. Matt Gaetz was right to press Schiff for specifics. If you can't even define who qualifies for special treatment, you shouldn't be making the law. And frankly, I'm tired of the virtue signaling. Real patriots want a system that works, a system that keeps us safe, that rewards people who follow the rules, and that doesn't let politicians like Adam Schiff use compassion as a Trojan horse for open borders. If you agree with me, hit that like button, subscribe for more unapologetic truth, and share this video with your friends. Let's keep fighting for America, the country we love, the country we defend, and the country that deserves leaders who put us first. God bless you. God bless our border agents, and God bless the United States of America.